The Middle East Institute at Georgia State University presents Arabic Grammar Unpacked. In this lesson, we will be discussing the present tense of verbs, specifically what's called the mudari' marfu', or the present indicative, the regular present tense. In al-Kitaab, we're introduced to the present tense right away. Maha says, Askunu fi Medinati New York. I live in New York City. Adrusu al-adab al-Inglisi. I study English literature. Walidi ya'mal fil al-mutahhida. My father works in the United Nations. Wa walidati ta'mal fi nafs al-jamia. My mother works at the same university. So this is really a pretty good way to introduce the present tense. We can already see that the alif bihamza prefix equals I do that thing. The ya bifatha prefix is he does, and the ta bifatha prefix is she does something. And then each verb has a stem, usually with sukun over the first letter of the verb, then either fatha or dhamma or kasra over the second letter, and then a little dhamma at the end. We already know that verbs in Arabic have 5 parts. Amila, the past tense, he worked, also the name of the verb to work. Ya'malu, the present tense, he works. Al-amal, what's called the masdar or verbal noun, the act of working. Amil, a worker. Ma'mul, something that has been worked. Amila, the past tense, al-maldi, is called simply the past tense, often the perfect tense, because the action has been completed. The tense we'll discuss today is called al-mudari', which is simply a grammatical term. It doesn't have a meaning in the regular world. We can call it the present tense or sometimes the imperfect tense, which means that the action is incomplete. Al-amal is the masdar or verbal noun. It's sometimes called a gerund in English grammar. Al-Kitaab prefers the term verbal noun and means the act of working. An amil is what we call ism al-fa'il in Arabic, the name of the doer or active participle indicating the person or object performing that action. While ma'mul, ism al-maf'ul, is the passive participle or the person or object that has had that action performed upon them. In this lesson, we'll be discussing al-mudari', the present tense. In Arabic, as it turns out, there are actually 3 different, closely related versions of the present tense. Al-mudari' al-marfu', which is usually given the name present indicative or imperfect indicative in English. Al-mudari' al-mansub, which is usually given the name imperfect subjunctive. And al-mudari' al-majzum, which is often given the funny name jussive in English. In this lesson, we'll be discussing al-mudari' al-marfu', the first of them, the regular present tense or present indicative. When we conjugate a verb in the present indicative, the mudari' marfu', we're usually given the verb over here on the right in the he does it form, ya'malu. So in order to conjugate it, the first thing we're going to do is take off the prefix, the ya bifatha, and then we're going to add back a prefix and sometimes a suffix depending on who is performing that action. We'll start with ana a'malu. We add alif bihamza as our prefix. Anta ta'malu. Anti ta'malina. Huwa ya'malu. Hiya ta'malu. Now, notice here that the anta and the hiya forms of the verb each have exactly the same form. This can be confusing if you're talking to a man or about a woman or a non-human plural object. You're going to use the same form of the verb. But if you're talking to a woman, then you're going to have to add this suffix, ina. This is very confusing for beginning students and is something you need to pay careful attention to. Again, if you're talking to a man or about a woman, you're going to use the same form. But if you're talking to a woman, you have to add an additional suffix. The dual forms, which al-Kitaab doesn't pay very much attention to, are antuma, you two people, ta'malani, huma, which in here is either 2 men or a man and a woman, ya'malani, but if it's 2 women, you have to say ta'malani. Fortunately, we don't have to spend a great deal of time on these. Nahnu, human plural, we, na'malu, again, looking like many of the others, except it has the noon prefix. Antum, ta'maluna. So we take the ta'mal from anta, and now we add the human plural una suffix. Antunna, the human female you, plural, is ta'malna, not widely used in the modern language. Hum, human plural they, is ya'maluna, so we take the huwa form and add the una. And human plural female they, hunna, gets ya'melna. So here's the complete conjugation in the present indicative. So now might be a good time to take a screenshot so you can file this away in your files or print it out and put it in your notebook. Since al-Kitaab doesn't spend much time on the dual forms or the human female plural forms, here's a different version of the conjugation table with those grayed out. You can take a screenshot of these if you'd like. Now, using the present tense is really quite simple. If we have a sentence like أعمل في المكتبة ليلة الخميس, I work in the library Thursday night. أعمل can mean I work, it can mean I am working, it can mean I do work. There's not any distinction in this in Arabic, so it's a little bit simpler than English is, which is unusual for Arabic, and we should appreciate it. We can put a question word before the verb. We can say هل تعمل في ذلك المطعم? Do you work in that restaurant? This is asking for a yes or no response. Or we can put one of the other question words in front of it. أين تعملين صباح الأربعاء? Where do you work Wednesday morning? And notice here that the ina suffix indicates that we're talking to a woman. أعمل في المكتبة ليلة الخميس. Again, it could mean I am working, I do work, I work in the library Thursday night. Remember from the previous lesson on the past tense that if we put the little word قد before the past tense, here we have قد عملت في المكتبة هذا الأسبوع. I worked, or I did work, in the library this week. The قد kind of re-emphasizes the fact that that action took place in the past tense. But watch out and be very careful, because if we put قد before a present tense verb, it means something very different. قد أعمل في المكتبة هذا الأسبوع means I might work or I could work in the library this week. So the meaning of قد is very different depending on which tense you're going to use after it. So please pay careful attention to that. قد is not common in colloquial speech, but it's quite common in the formal language, and you'll see both of them in literature and journalism all the time. So please be aware of this. قد عملت, I did work, but قد أعمل, I might work. When we negate the present tense, we simply put the particle la before it. La cannot negate an adjective or a noun, but it does negate a present tense verb. لا أعمل في المكتبة ليلة الخميس. I don't work, or I am not working, in the library Thursday night. We can put a negation particle at the end, remembering that Arabic uses double negation like French or Spanish. So لا أعمل ليلة الخميس أبدا would mean I never work on Thursday night. And if we're going to ask a negative question, when we put hal plus la together, we get Allah. So if we say Allah ta'mal Zohra fil maktaba, this would mean doesn't Zohra work in the library? It's really not that difficult to work with, but if you see Allah, it might confuse you a little bit. And so remember that Allah is hal plus la. To use the future tense, we simply put the prefix sa on the present tense verb. So sa'a'malu fil maktaba laylat al-khamis. I will work in the library Thursday night. And it looks a little funny with the alif bihamza prefix, but that's actually the way it looks. With a different person conjugation, we could say hal sata'malu laylat al-khamis. Will you work Thursday night? That question is being asked to a man, of course, because we don't have the ina ending. And sometimes, instead of sa, we'll use what sa is short for, which is sofa. Sofa ya'mal Muhammad sabah al-jum'ah. Muhammad will work on Friday morning. Sofa is extremely formal and sort of takes the place of English shall and is almost never used in conversation, but we're simply using it here for completion. So, using the present tense is very simple. We learn the conjugation pattern. We can use a question word before it. We can use qad before it to indicate might or could. We can use la before it to indicate don't. And we can use the prefix sa to indicate the future tense, will do that thing. And those are the uses of what we call the mudari' marfu', or the present indicative.